Let's get going. So I'm calling this the global macro rundown. The first half, we're going to talk about the state of the U.S. economy because we've had some important data releases, and then we're going to move on to Trump and Iran. Will he or won't he? So let's kick off looking at the state of the economy. First, let's begin by asking the question, what are the major concerns about the U.S. economy right now? Yesterday, we discussed the stock market bubble concerns, right? All these concerns about a stock market bubble. At least I attempted to dismiss those concerns. Today, we are going to address the dominant concern regarding the economy. The concern we hear so often is that the economy is slowing, the employment picture is weak, and it's only a matter of time before the bleak employment picture spreads to the broader economy. According to this concern, Trump's tariff policies will take a real bite out of the economy sooner or later, right? Not just an inflationary impact, but a real damage to the underlying fundamentals of the economy, and we're going to see a sharp economic slowdown. And this is inevitable. Maybe we haven't experienced the full brunt so far from the tariffs, but it's coming. Don't fool yourself. So that's the narrative. But let's be objective and focus on what the data is telling us, not what some of the commentators are saying. Now, we don't want our political biases to get into the way. We don't want anything to cloud our investment decisions, so it's really critical that we just focus on the economic data. Well, yesterday, we got the GDP revision for the third quarter of 2025. And it showed, I said yesterday, I mean today, right? My time is off today. And it showed that the economy is expanding by a whopping 4.4% during the third quarter of last year. Now, the initial number that was reported was 4.3%, and we received that number a few months back. So with this revision, we see a slight upward pickup to what was already a very strong third quarter. Now, this is an incredibly strong number. The average long-term growth rate in the United States is believed to be about 1.8% or even slightly lower than 1.8%. And we have been running well above 1.8% for a few years now. And we actually seem to be accelerating right now, thanks to our incredible technology sector. So I want to be clear, this has nothing to do with what any president has done. It's thanks to our incredible businesses and entrepreneurs. But look, that 4.4% growth number that I just discussed, that was the third quarter of last year. What about more recent data? Well, the Atlanta Fed has a pretty reliable GDP tracker, and this model is indicating that the economy expanded by 5.4% in the fourth quarter of 2025. And that 5.4% number, growth number, was just updated today. So it is very much up to date. Now, I want to be clear, that's not an official growth number yet. It's just an estimate based on this Atlanta Fed model. But this model has a good track record of predicting fairly accurately. Okay? Now, it's pretty clear based on this data that the economy is strong. And all these slowdown concerns and recession concerns, they have been off base. Now, that said, this is still data from the October to December period of 2025. So do we have anything more up to date? Well, we have very recent data from the jobs market, and remember, it's the jobs market that has been the real source of all the concern. Before we get to the jobs data that was released today, Let's give a little background on what exactly investors and economists have been concerned about as it relates to the jobs market. They've been worried that maybe the economic growth numbers that we've just discussed are misleading, and the underlying economy is in fact much weaker than the headline numbers suggest. After all, we know that hiring has been sluggish. We know that many companies have stalled or paused hiring. And you've probably heard about the K economy. It's become the in thing to talk about the K economy. What's the K economy? Well, the upper part of the K symbolizes that some people are doing much better in this economy. But the lower part of the K, the part that goes down, symbolizes all the people that are doing much worse. So, are we in a K economy? Before I address that question, I first want to say that since I started my career on Wall Street, and this goes back over 30 years ago, economists and commentators have loved to use letters to characterize the state of the economy. So I did a little research. I was curious to see when commentators and economists started to use letters to characterize the economy. And this seems to date back to the 1940s. Just a little interesting piece of trivia. Anyway, like most past letters that have been used, the letter K is probably not a great description or characterization of our economy. Now, are some people doing amazingly well, both economically and financially, while others are struggling? Yes. Yes, but that's always the case. Are we seeing a more extreme version of this phenomena, that some people are doing remarkably well and some people are struggling? Well, perhaps we are seeing a more extreme version of that. But I want to point out that anytime an economy goes through a transformational technological revolution, there are going to be those people who are at the forefront of that transformation, and they're in a position to benefit more than anyone else. Okay, so that's happening. This is a technological revolution. So, of course, there are people who are capturing that revolution, the benefits, more than others. But are there people that are actually worse off? Well, here again, there are always some people who are going to see a real deterioration in their living standards. But by and large, if you look at the economy as a whole, wages are rising, people's living standards are improving. But there's no doubt the wealth gap is increasing. Okay? The wealth gap increasing just means that there are certain people getting wealthier much faster than others. But by and large, everybody is doing better. Because technology, if you look at history and if you look at current day, it seems to make everyone better off. It lifts all boats, or at least it lifts most boats. But yes, some boats are lifted higher than others. And those who are the leaders of the tech industry and those who are the fastest adopters of technology will see the greatest gains. But overall, most people are benefiting and will continue to benefit. So the letter K is clever, it's concise, but it's not really an accurate portrayal of the state of our economy today. But that was just an aside. I want to get back to the state of the jobs market. It seems that we may be seeing some green shoots, some positive developments. So today we got initial jobless claims. And initial jobless claims continue to come in surprisingly low. So over the last week, we saw that only 200,000 people lost their jobs over the prior 5 business days. And that's actually a shockingly low number of job losses. And these numbers have been right around 200,000 over recent weeks. Again, that's an incredibly low number. The comfort zone for weekly job losses ranges somewhere between 215,000 to 240,000. So if you're down at 215,000, that's a very low number, indicative of very few people losing their jobs. If you're below 215,000, that's a shockingly low number. And when it's as low as it is right now, it would ordinarily be accompanied by a decline in the unemployment rate. A decline in the unemployment rate. So, yes, very few people are losing their jobs in the United States. And I suspect, I called this green shoots. It's because I suspect this means that hiring will probably pick up soon enough, probably in the next 4 to 5 months. Now, this is good news, but it also means that the Fed will not be in any rush to cut interest rates because GDP growth is strong, job losses are low. The Fed probably has my view that it means that hiring could pick up over the next 4 to 6 months. And while inflation is still not back to the Fed's target, it will likely get there. It's not impossible that we could be at the Fed's inflation target by year end, but more likely we'll be at the Fed's inflation target sometime around June or July of next year, 2027. So even though the Fed is probably not going to be on a rate cutting path anytime too soon, this is a very good backdrop for the stock market. Now, let's move on to geopolitics. And question is, Trump and Iran, will he or won't he? The question that is on the top of every geopolitical strategist's mind is, will Trump strike Iran? So we have two instances from recent history to help us answer this very important question. The first instance of when Trump used military force was June of last year, June of 2025, when Trump took out Iran's nuclear infrastructure. The second instance of when Trump used military force was January 3rd of this year, when the US military extracted Maduro from Venezuela. In both of these cases, Trump's approach of using military force followed the exact same pattern. So I want to go over this pattern and see how it matches up with what is transpiring today towards Iran. So first, Trump, in both of these instances, made warnings. He told the Iranians, when I say the Iranians, I mean the Iranian regime, and he told the Venezuelan regime, I don't like your behavior. In the case of Iran, he was referring to his desire for the Iranians to surrender their nuclear capabilities and to commit to a future without nuclear weapons. In the case of Venezuela, Trump's warnings referred to he wanted Venezuela, the government, to stop shipping drugs to the United States. Now, in both instances, in the case of Iran and in the case of Venezuela, Trump's warnings were ignored. So that brings us to the second stage. Trump made numerous offers to negotiate with the Iranians. And he also made numerous offers to negotiate with Maduro. In the case of Maduro, he said, I want to talk to you. And he did talk to Maduro several times. And he offered him the opportunity to leave Venezuela peacefully and safely. In the case of Iran, he also had his advisors, most importantly, Steve Witkoff, meet with the Iranians and say, look, we want you to surrender your nuclear ambitions, and we're going to offer you some fairly appealing things if you accept to relinquish your military nuclear ambitions. But Iran was not willing to have sincere talks, and Maduro was not willing to leave Venezuela. So that brought us to the third stage. Trump made explicit threats. To Venezuela, he said, we may take military action if you don't comply. And in fact, he did take some minor military action, striking their boats that were transporting drugs to the United States, right? He took those boats out in the sea, right? He struck them. So Trump was sending a very clear signal to Maduro. He took a similar approach to the Iranians. He told the Iranians, we are going to hit you. We're going to strike you. And similar to the case of Venezuela, Trump gave Israel the green light to strike Iran and take out their ballistic missiles. And Trump was saying, look, you're testing me. I'm allowing Israel to hit you hard, similar to the way we hit Venezuela's drug boats hard. But it can stop here. If you're willing to go to the negotiating table and accept my demands, it can stop here. But the threats were ignored. The military actions were ignored, which brings us to the fourth stage. In the case of Venezuela, military assets were moved into place off the shores of Venezuela. Now, much of the world saw Trump's threats as a bluff. You know the saying, taco, Trump always chickens out. And the entire time, while Trump was making the threats, he continued to offer the opportunity to negotiate. Similarly with Iran, he amassed huge military forces off the shores of Iran. And at the same time, he offered to negotiate. But the Iranians ignored it, just as the Venezuelans ignored it. That leads us to the fifth stage. In the weeks leading up to both strikes, those forces only grew. They intensified. And still, Maduro and the Iranians ignored, which leads us to the sixth stage. Trump remained ambiguous right until the moment of kinetic action, right until the moment of military action. He always held out the possibility of negotiation. It wasn't clear what Trump would do until the very moment when he finally acted. So does any of this sound familiar? Because so far what we're seeing today follows the Trump playbook to the T. Let's take a look. First, warnings have been made to the regime. Trump told them, I don't like your behavior. You better stop killing the protesters. But the mullahs in Iran have ignored Trump's warnings. Second, Trump has made numerous offers to negotiate with the Iranians. There have been numerous reports that Steve Witkoff, Trump's Middle East negotiator, has reached out to the Iranians to talk, to encourage them to agree to stop killing and to stop rebuilding their nuclear weapons program, because they are rebuilding their nuclear weapons program as quickly as they possibly can. They're very, very far from it, years away, but they're trying. But Iran has continued to slaughter protesters. Third, Trump has made explicit threats, telling the Iranians he will hit them hard. He's given warning after warning, even going so far as to tell the Iranian people to stay in the streets because help is on the way. And Trump went even further, saying a new leadership in Iran is needed. But these threats have also been ignored, and the mass killing and the mass arrests have continued. Now, Trump has even gone so far as to be misleading. And he said that Iran planned 837 executions. And I warned them, and they stopped their executions. Why is Trump and the Iranian regime continues to murder the protesters, right? That never stopped. Why did Trump focus on these executions? He focused on it because he seems to be giving them an opportunity to negotiate, or at least that's what he's pretending to do. It might be a head fake. Fourth, Trump is moving military assets into place. Much of the world thinks Trump's threats are a bluff, just like the world thought so with Iran in June of last year and with Venezuela in January of this year. Okay, they believe Trump's threats are a bluff. And they especially think Trump is bluffing after last week's false start when we all thought Trump was about to attack, that the US military was about to attack, and then everything was paused, everything stopped. Now, there's a rumor that many countries in the Middle East, including Turkey, Qatar, even Israel, encouraged Trump to hold off, to stop. And he pulled back. Others speculate that Trump was advised by his own military to hold off because removing this regime may turn into an endless war. And Trump hates endless wars. So many think he's standing down, at least for now, and maybe forever. Yet this entire time, Trump continues to make his threats. And he continues to offer the opportunity to negotiate at the same time. He says, maybe I'll attack, maybe I won't. Just yesterday in Davos, Steve Witkoff said that the administration believes this can all be resolved through talks, and nobody wants war. So this ambiguity keeps going and going. Fifth, U.S. military assets are on the way towards Iran. And every day they're getting closer to arriving. Sixth, and I said this before, I'll say it again, Trump has remained ambiguous right until this very moment, still holding out the possibility of negotiation. It isn't clear what Trump will do. He has the world confused and guessing, and many think he's bluffing, exactly the same way he did with Iran last year and Venezuela just a few weeks ago. I would say, based on these two recent examples, it's a good bet that a strike is on the way. Now, I want to answer a question that I had. What type of assets are being deployed? Okay, we know that there is an aircraft carrier called the USS Abraham Lincoln. And the question is, what does this mean? It's an aircraft carrier. So I did some research. This is not just sending a ship towards Iran. It's deploying a carrier strike group, a mobile, self-contained joint combat force. What does that mean? It means it's carrying 5,000 sailors on the carrier. In addition, it's carrying somewhere between 1,500 and 2,000 sailors that are on accompanying cruisers and destroyers and logistic ships. It's carrying an aircraft carrier as well as a floating nuclear-powered airbase. In addition, it has 65 to 75 other super sophisticated aircrafts. It's carrying a guided missile cruiser. It's carrying 2 guided missile destroyers. It's carrying a nuclear attack submarine. It's got logistic ships that will enable the Lincoln to operate for many months at sea. So, what does all this mean? It means the US will have air dominance without the need for a host nation to use as a base. It means that the United States will have immediate strike and escalation control. It means that the United States will have layered defense against air, missile, and surface and subsurface threats, which probably we don't even need because Israel took out all of Iran's air defense systems. So, bottom line, a carrier strike group that we're sending towards Iran, which will be there any day now, is not symbolism. It is a sovereign, mobile combat power ready on arrival. So, as it relates to the financial markets, what does it mean? Well, initially, it may cause some severe jitters. But every time we've seen the US military complete its mission successfully, financial markets respond very well. And if this leads to the ultimate toppling of this evil regime, it's a darn good bet that the markets will cheer. So that's it, guys. I kept it short and sweet. If anyone has any comments or questions, as always, happy to hear them.